Welcome everyone to episode 3 of Wine Piece, the show where I, a zealot of a One Piece fan, get my good friend Mitch through the long, incredible journey of One Piece while sharing wine because Mitch is an expert with wine, and that was the preferred mechanism for getting through this show is alcohol, which doesn't hurt my feelings at all.
It's definitely it's helping, right? It's giving me something else to do while I'm watching all these episodes and planning and thinking about my life decisions. So
You've made good choices so far, so I'm enjoying this.
so let's open up this bad boy today. And today we're having the Columbia Crest H3 Horse Heaven Hills Merlot 2019. Let me talk a little bit about it. So this is a red wine, as we can tell. Appellation, like we talked
Did you
about.
say red nose?
There you go. It's Horse Heaven Hills, which is in Washington State. And you'll notice H3, Horse Heaven Hills. There you go. In the U.S., appellations are called AVAs, American Viticultural Areas, and they only refer to the geographic region. So we talked about how in Europe, they'll have rules about what grapes you can use and all that. Not in the U.S. It just tells you this area has been designated as a specific area for growing wine. This is a good introduction to what are called nested AVAs. So AVAs within AVAs, little matryoshka dolls of AVAs. Horse Heaven Hills is within Columbia Valley AVA, which is within Washington State. This is something interesting that a lot of people don't know. Washington State is actually the second largest producer of wine in the U.S. after California.
Okay.
When people think about U.S. wine, they think California. They don't realize that, no, there's a lot of wine grown elsewhere, but most of it is in California. People think of Washington State as a rainy place, but actually the east part of the state is a high elevation desert.
Okay.
So this is where the grapes are grown. So the west coast rain, but then you have these mountain ranges that block the rain from going over, and it has a desert on the other side. One thing that's really good to note about wine is the more you learn about wine, the more you learn about geography and geology. So I think there's a One Piece tie-in there.
Whatever the situation is or locale that's best suited to grow this particular kind of wine.
Basically, that's the idea.
Lots of options around an area where the climate changes in a short amount of space.
I can't tell if you're trying to make a...
I'm not making any reference whatsoever. Just asking a question about wine.
Yeah. So what's important to know about that geography and geology, the reason you learn so much about it, is that grapes for wine...
No, I was just thinking, like, yeah, if there's a big divide, we'll call that the Grand Line. And I was like, that's a terrible joke. I'm so sorry. Yeah, anyways.
So something important to know about wine is that the best place to grow grapes for wine are places where they will struggle. Okay? This actually leads to wines with more concentrated flavors. And there's a term for this. It's called stress. We all know about stress. But basically, wine grapes grow better under stress. Unlike me. This is what would be known as a varietal Merlot. When we say varietal wine, it means a wine that's made up of one grape, or at least really showcases one single grape variety, even if it has other ones. With that said, though, generally in the U.S., a wine only has to be 75% of a certain grape to be considered a varietal wine, so grain of salt on that one. Merlot is actually one of the most planted grapes in the world, but often it's used to blend with other wines because it can actually help soften wines or soften other grapes that maybe have some harsher notes. So it's used a lot for that purpose. A lot of people think that maybe it's not good for wine, but actually it's fantastic for making wine by itself. Now, it's enough about the wine. Now for the reason, the theme. Why is this the wine for today? Well, I felt like the big themes of episodes 8 and 9 are anger, resentment, and grudges. In these episodes, we learn about Buggy's history with Shanks. Okay? So let's talk about the sideways effect. Sideways effect gets its name from a 2004 film called Sideways. Okay? In the movie, the main character, played by Paul Giamatti, he's a wine aficionado, and he goes to wine country with his friend for a bachelor party. There's more to it than that, but Paul Giamatti goes to wine country. Okay? The effect... The sideways effect stems largely from this one very famous quote. And the quote is, I might have to edit this. No, if anyone orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I'm not drinking any effing Merlot. The character holds a grudge against Merlot because his ex-wife liked Merlot. He prefers Pinot Noir. This led to an immediate drop in Merlot sales and an immediate increase in Pinot Noir sales that continues to this day. While there are other factors, the immediate impact was very clear, right?
The fictional character influencer.
Yep.
Nice.
And basically, the personal grudge held by a character in the mid 2000s indie movie impacted wine trends in the US in ways that are still felt 20 years later. The funny thing is, though, Merlot, like I said, produces some of the greatest wines in the world. And at the end of the movie, he drinks one of the world's great Merlots, right? So there's like a little bit of irony in the thing as well. So in that theme, just like yesterday, or last episode, I brought in white wine because I love white wines. I love Merlots. I love American Merlots. So I wanted to celebrate an American Merlot from arguably the region that does it best, which is Washington State, because Merlot's a great wine. It just got a lot of bad rap, and now people think that it's crap wine. And this wine in particular is super available, super affordable. It's found nationwide. So I want people to go out there and try it if they can, just so they can see, hey, Merlot can actually be pretty delicious. You can drop the grudge.
Sure.
Right? So, cheers. All right.
So what's the tie-in? Yeah, so I get the idea of why you want viewers to try the Merlot. What's the tie-in to these characters? Do you see Buggy being a big Merlot fan? What's the idea?
No,
tell us a
honestly,
little bit more about the
no.
connection here.
No individual tie-in to a character. This one isn't themed after a character interaction. It's instead, the thing that stands out to me here and that I want to continue exploring is Buggy's grudge and resentment towards Shanks. There's a lot of stuff that happens, right? There's all kinds of good like fight scenes and stuff like that happens. But the thing that keeps on coming back is anger, resentment, and grudge, right? So this wine, taste-wise, is not anything that's going to remind me or think about that. Is the fact that I can't help but think about the sideways.
It's the history of the wine.
The history of this wine is a history of grudge.
And it's kind of funny too because Buggy and Shanks don't seem altogether conflicting. I mean, they kind of do, but more like siblings in conflict. Like, they have their discussions of what kind of pirates they would want to be, but they're not fighting to the death. However, we see after the fact that Buggy also obviously carries a grudge.
Yep. So
fair.
Let's go into some of that anger, resentment, and grudge, right? Like I said, that is the thing that permeates, but it takes a little bit before we get into that. So we're only talking about 2 episodes.
Just 2.
7 and 8. I feel like a lot happens, but they go by pretty fast. But it does conclude this little mini arc that we've been looking at very well. So it starts off with Luffy knocking out the mayor.
Yep.
Love it. I am here for that because
the mayor was trying to get himself killed.
He was.
And we know that Buggy is willing to kill people, blowing up the town, stabbing Zoro in the back. We know that Buggy is willing.
100%. I like that it's resourceful. It's surprising, which we already know that Luffy's surprising. We know that he's resourceful. We know that he's going to use his terrain to fight or whatever. But in this case, he's just, what does the situation need? And he's unorthodox, right? He's not bound by some external conflict. He's like, this guy needs to stop. What is the quickest way to make him stop? Knock him out.
Well, and the mayor's goal isn't to fight. Like, it's his kind of stated goal is like, what would I be as a mayor if I'm not willing to fight for this town? But like everyone involved, all of the viewers watching is like, this guy is not going to do anything. He's not going to be able to take on one of the members of Buggy's crew, much less Buggy himself. Even if he has that kind of makeshift armor, whatever you want to call it. And Luffy's like, well, that's not your main goal. The town is your treasure. I'm already going to be fighting for that anyways. Just get out of the way.
Yep.
So it's also the question of like good and evil too. We might think of like, wow, beating up on old man, that's not good. But Luffy's like, no, it's not good. But also, me making you unconscious in anime logic, where a concussion is fine, is much better than you getting stabbed or choked or whatever else by Buggy the Clown.
We're also just briefly introduced to a new move, Gum Gum Balloon. So I'm keeping tabs.
Oh yeah, we mentioned the Buggy Ball before, so let's get into surprise number 50. I don't know where we're at this point, but
We are at 3 Gum Gum moves. We're at Rocket, Pistol. Sorry, 4 Gum Gum moves. Rocket, Pistol, Whip, Balloon. So, more seriously though, we do learn in this that Buggy is willing to use his henchmen to protect himself, it's like meat shields, whereas Luffy tries to protect his crewmates.
right. They launch the Buggy Ball. Luffy protects everyone there and reflects it back, and Buggy, is it Cabbagey also like holds somebody? Oh, he holds the lion up.
One of my favorite quotes comes up here. It's such a ridiculous quote. Has no depth to it. It's just wonderful. I'm so angry I can't even fart. I
mean, we call it highbrow literature for a reason.
it's, listen, Shakespeare made his fart jokes.
I mean, what's a pirate if he can't make that kind of joke? Like,
Yeah.
We also have, we talked about it before, but we kind of cement it now that Buggy's crew is circus themed. So I like that there are aesthetics to the teams as well as the characters, individual characters themselves. So I'm interested to see how that develops, because I know that characters are going to develop and characters are going to change and whatever. I want to see how the aesthetics stick.
I have a practical question for you about this, and this is something that I think every One Piece fan has wondered at one point or another. Do you think that Buggy found each of these crew members one at a time and then trained them to be circus themed? Or do you think he just went out searching for circus-esque performers and then made them pirates?
Okay. The fact that Buggy has crew members that are less circus themed, or arguably not even really circus themed from an outside view, tells me that he has his aesthetic that he guarantees, but in order to move up, you have to fit the aesthetic.
You have to be extra circusy if you want to move up to the first mate or the chief of staff or whatever.
Exactly. Like, it's not just quality, it's quality with style. I'm a big soccer fan, right? And one thing you get a lot in soccer is there's teams that are more than happy to win, and there's teams that need to win a certain way. Buggy is that. He sticks to his ideology, his aesthetic. Listen, I respect it.
If you can't commit to the bit,
Exactly.
don't join us.
We get a really interesting quote from Zoro as well. I can't lose even once to anyone who calls himself a swordsman, which makes sense. We know that. It's his resolve, right? But that does seem to set up...
You can't lose to a guy on a unicycle either. Like,
Exactly.
It does set up an interesting idea, though, right? That, like, if we see a swordsman... I said it before, right? Like, he's fighting people with blades. If we see a swordsman, he's like, hold up. I got this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that concept of resolve is brought back with that. After that, we have some other attacks that come up. We have the Chop Chop Cannon, which I think is the first named Chop Chop move we have. But it's fine. Chop Chop Cannon goes on, and he does the ground hugging Chop Chop Cannon. We have Zoro's first named attack, where he has the pun on the onigiri, which the subtitle says onigiri. I'm pretty sure he says onikiri, which would mean demon cut.
But
interesting. Well, puns
there's
are
also-
puns are a big part of it too, so pronunciation could be involved. I'm not sure. I always thought it was onigiri as being like the tie-in to the rice balls.
Well, here's the thing, and we're gonna go from rice balls into linguistics. Do you know what the concept of voiced and voiceless consonants is?
No,
Okay.
maybe I could get it from context, but yeah.
I'll make this real quick. A voiced consonant makes your basically your vocal folds vibrate, and a voiceless doesn't.
Okay.
So you have sounds that are pairs of each other where they're effectively the same sound, but one is voiced and one is voiceless. So a good example is F and V. F doesn't make make the vocal cords vibrate. V, the same mouth shape makes your vocal cords vibrate.
Okay. Any of our viewers that just tried that have to like and subscribe.
G and K are voice and voiceless versions of each other. So g, k, same sounds and everything, but g makes it vibrate, k does not. And in Japanese, actually, you actually signal that, like you write it and you put there's a little like two little, it's like a quotation mark that you put on it to signal that it's one versus the other. So just saying, the pun exists in Japanese.
Yeah. Well, particularly in the manga, that kind of gets played up to an even bigger extent. The chapter titles, chapter 1, 2, 3, eventually they'll start having tie-ins to the meanings and things. So if you really ever get into conspiracies of One Piece, the additional puns and play on words are excessive. We see it in other anime too, like Ichigo always is number 15 on his shirts. It happens a lot, but One Piece plays it up by even greater amounts.
I love it. From there, we get Nami feeling remorse when she removes the treasure from the vault.
Mm-hmm.
Like the story is jumping around a little bit at this point, but that's how it is. Like everybody is fully in their story. So now we're jumping.
As soon as Zoro and Luffy are getting into fight mode, Nami's getting into robber mode.
It's a thief mode. Yeah.
And, she does win her one-on-one.
Yep. That is true. And then we get back to Buggy, right? What's interesting here is Buggy ends up being the first person we meet who's also looking to be King of Pirates.
Mm-hmm.
So now how am I organizing all this? And I think this is very well done. In very quick succession, we have all of the characters Luffy has met. They have all introduced and acted upon their ambition.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Zoro, can't lose to a swordsman. You have Nami, who is getting treasure, right? And you have Buggy talking about wanting to be King of Pirates. So even though at this point it's jumping between characters, all of them are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is Buggy, who is the first person, like I said, that we see that wants to be King of Pirates that isn't Luffy. Also a very different character from Luffy, right?
Well, what do you think about the difference in journeys and the likelihood of becoming King of Pirates? We see Buggy as kind of the first maybe big competitor to Luffy. He's the first Devil Fruit we see that isn't Luffy's. He's the first Devil Fruit user, and he says he wants to be King of the Pirates. Now with Luffy, we know he's a kid. He's just starting out. He's got one crewmate, looking at getting another one, and we kind of see him going from what seems to be his hometown outwards. Buggy says that he wants to be Pirate King, but we know he's roughly the same age as Shanks, and he's in the same location as Luffy. Do you see that as coincidence? Do you think that takes away from Buggy's credibility towards saying he wants to be the King of the Pirates? Because something that occurs to me that if Luffy is, I think he's 18, is he 17? He's basically going in a straight line towards being King of the Pirates, and Buggy at some level, he's camping out in a town. Granted, I think they say they're going to be leaving soon, but he has matched somebody who was influenced by his arguable rival in Shanks from 10 years earlier.
So that's an interesting one, that there's the Shanks there. The Shanks connection there, right? That you have Shanks' protege has caught up.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there's a big difference in the fact that, okay, and this is jumping forward into the flashback a little bit. Buggy seems to be someone who is patient, willing to wait for a moment and take that. So what I'm reading here is Luffy's rushing. Like Luffy is just trying to get on as quickly as possible, gather his crew on the way and figure it out. Buggy wants to have everything figured out before he advances. He has treasure, he has a map, he has all the stuff, and he's trying to do that. And I think maybe that comes from the fact that he acted too quickly previously and lost so much.
Okay.
I do want to explore the Luffy Buggy parallels, but we're going to get to that into the flashback.
Okay.
We get the information that Buggy knows Shanks, which is huge. This is what I like, and we talked about this before when we were talking about, like, in episode 0 about connections and how, what are the things that would worry me, right?
Yeah.
With such a large world that supposedly this is, you need cohesion. And the fact that we now have two characters that are important, that are connected, helps create those connections to the world so that we have this overlapping, this like chain link situation, right?
Sure.
We're not just introducing characters independently of each other, we're introducing characters and immediately tying them to a grander narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Shanks' importance to the world is more real by the fact that Luffy is happening across someone else that is also related to Shanks.
Or even if not, even if he's not important to the world, right? He could be, he could not be. It doesn't matter. It's that idea that this world has actual connections, not just isolated islands. I think one of my worries was that they were going to go to New Island, and all of a sudden, like, oh, this new island, look at all this quirky stuff, and then they leave, and that's it. And there's no.
Here's one bathtub story. We get out of this bathtub, move to another bathtub story. Ideally, for readers that haven't heard of that term before, it's just here's a story that's completely wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow. Then you set it to the side, and then move on to another story with the exact same characters, but nothing has really changed between point A to point B. And so that's a pretty reasonable fear.
Already, we're addressing that topic. Also, just keeping the devil fruit inventory, we get Chop Chop Rice Cracker, Chop Chop Quick Escape, and Gum Gum Sickle.
And it's funny that Gum Gum Sickle doesn't work, considering it's a implied slashing kind of attack. Like, a sickle is going to slash against the person that is slash proof.
I was going to talk about this too, but if Zoro is protecting Luffy from people that can cut him, and if Rubberman can be cut, there's an interesting foil in that Buggy can't be cut. But yeah, I digress.
But can still take a beating.
Absolutely. So Luffy...
I'll have a question about that later. Let's keep going where we are. But
so Luffy goes into a rage when his hat gets cut, right? And I guess what's interesting about this is he goes into a rage. Obviously, he's upset. He's affected by it. And it does affect me as an individual watching Luffy. I don't want to see Luffy upset. I don't want to see Luffy hurt. But it's almost less impactful than Luffy fighting for other people.
Okay.
Right? It's more shocking. And it does make me wonder, or make me curious about, like, how is rage going to factor in, right? You know, Luffy gets angry and he does stuff. Now what happens later when Luffy gets even more angry, right? But emotionally, it impacted me more seeing him defend somebody else. Okay. Nami notices it, which is kind of cool. And all of this doubles down on the concept of treasure, because he gets into rage because of his hat being cut. So we already know that this is important, and we know how important his hat is. We know how important treasure is in general. So it just doubles on that. For Buggy, treasures seem to represent the owner's grandeur.
Sure. It's the status, the visual appeal of it, what have you.
Whereas for Luffy, they're personally and sentimentally significant items that represent commitment to a personal goal. What's interesting is that's maybe the most concise example of how crew ideologies can change. Because when we met Alvida, we didn't know anything other than she's big and has a club.
Yeah, wants admiration, specifically for looks.
Correct. We now have another motivation. And here's the funny thing. And this is something that's just coming to my head now. Buggy uses his henchmen, whatever, as like meat shields and whatnot. But if people join their pirate crews for an ideology, right? We know that Alvida led by fear, so you're too scared to leave. But it seems like for Buggy's people, I didn't get that feeling of fear. But they're all very flashy. They're all very extravagant. They all are externally motivated people.
Flashy is Buggy's code word.
Right? Yeah. But now I'm wondering if, okay, so this pirate crew is held together by this group commitment to showing the social status and working together to get this grandeur, this treasure, in order to show social status. In which case now I go back to Buggy being annoyed about his nose, or when people talk about his nose, because maybe that's something that it's a situation of he wants to be seen for what he wants to be seen. And his nose, he doesn't want people to focus on that and pay attention to that. I don't know. But again, we'll see how it goes. But this is where my brain is wandering to with this idea of ideologies for all the crews.
I wonder if See, this is one of those times where like I've got to be careful how I say it to make odd implications. But I wonder if Buggy wants to be seen in a positive way. You know, if somebody's, but he tends to just fly off the handle if someone even mentions his nose, not even the context of it, or even if they've actually mentioned his nose, it just sounds like they've mentioned his nose. But you know, if somebody was like, "Wow, Buggy, that's an awesome nose," and they meant it like with seriousness or like actual admiration, would Buggy be like, "Thank you," or would he be like, "How dare you mention my what's different about my nose?" Because like if the importance of it is flashiness, does he just want to be in control of how he's viewed? Does he just want the admiration? I feel like he does want the admiration. He has like the little party for his crew. It's kind of difficult to tell.
I feel like Buggy could be played by Joe Pesci in some kind of pirate-themed Goodfellas spinoff. Have you ever watched Goodfellas?
I have seen Goodfellas.
And you know the famous, like, what part of me is funny?
Right.
That? With Buggy? Like, what's so funny about my nose?
The actor, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the actor that's going to play Buggy in the live-action One Piece, I think one of the big things he did was in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I think he's going to do a good job. He's got pretty good comedic timing, and in that role, he had to kind of balance seriousness with kind of goofy buffoonishness, and that show's now been off the air for a few years. So I'm thinking that difference in time, he's going to be very good, but he's, as far as I know, a little lesser known. Certainly lesser known than Joe Pesci. So
also, one other thing I thought of, I found another tie-in for the wine. So in a lot of times people will say that American wines are particularly like flashy, over the top, right? A lot of fruit, very extracted, very boom. Mm-hmm. This is a Buggy wine.
Okay.
This is not a wine that lingers on its finesse. It's not a wine that's you're sitting there to just think about. This is a wine that it's going to smack you in the face with everything. So There you go. All right. So technically there's one thing that's brought into it to the end of the episode, but I think it's better to tie it into the next episode. And it's they give us the first bit of information that Buggy and Shanks know each other. They're crewmates, comrades, pirates in training. And we are told that Shanks is the one person Buggy can't forgive. And then leave us lingering with the question of why.
And for One Piece fans, if you're not a One Piece fan, or if you haven't seen past this, do not look this up. But if you're a One Piece fan, first appearance of Rayleigh. Super cool. Don't look that up.
Okay. Fair enough. So episode opens up. Very quickly we hear again that Shanks stole enormous riches from Buggy. And we are not told why yet. Okay? I love that the whole thing starts with an argument between them about the North Pole and the South Pole and which one's colder. Like, listen, I'm all for metaphors, and this one is smacking you over the head. If you want to talk about polar opposites.
Yeah. Let's just take the actual poles.
I will say, though, this is an interesting question where you have to ask yourself whether or how much this world is supposed to mimic ours. Because the South Pole is colder in our world. So if this world mimics ours, Shanks is right.
I know a little bit more about the geography of the One Piece world, but I mean, even as far as we know about there being a red line and a grand line, I'm not sure we've gotten into that discussion too much.
They intersect, right?
They intersect, and the poles may be slightly different. Climate, geography is going to be different in this world, so that might be something that we address later too.
Note to self: explore One Piece geography later. So this whole thing starts. So then the big drama starts with Buggy hiding a map, right? It's a map to treasure and stuff. And it's interesting. Shanks mentions that he wants to take his time traveling the world. He's not in a rush to anything. Buggy instead has a map that he wants to immediately go get treasure, right? I guess what's interesting to me with this is that particular outlook and motivation to go through life. In that sense, it's like Luffy mimics Shanks as well. Luffy wants to become the King of Pirates. He wants to go to the Grand Line, do all that, find the One Piece. But he's not on this like one track thing. He is living his life in that direction.
Right. Yeah, it's not something where you just become it, or you ask someone else, "Hey, can I be a king of pirates?" And then everybody agrees, "Hey, you're the king of the pirates." He has a specific idea for what the king of the pirates is, and is living his life in that direction.
And with Buggy, then Buggy, if his focus is wants to get there, then it makes more sense that he would be sitting around accumulating wealth somewhere else in order to be well prepared to do it as efficiently as possible, right?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question too. Like, why be a pirate if wealth is all you're looking for, anyways? Like, why not start a business and just use underhanded business practices? You might be able to get money even faster. What's quicker about robbing poor towns if that's your primary goal as a pirate? Like, is that actually going to be the fastest way to acquire wealth? This town does not look particularly wealthy.
Let me understand this. So, are you saying that Buggy should have just run a circus,
I mean,
run a traveling circus?
you see what all of them are doing in this area. A lot of people, if not everyone, is shocked by the fact that people have actually eaten devil fruits, and now you have these kind of impressive performances. Cabbagey doing nonsense on a unicycle with swords. They have a lion tamer. Buggy can split himself. They might have had a successful business.
Could have been. But I guess the thing that we don't have is what motivated Buggy to want to become king of pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know that for Luffy.
Yeah.
It's related to Shanks. But we don't know with Buggy yet why he wants to. We just know that he is a pirate. Right?
That might also be his primary skill set. Like, clearly he likes to fight, so...
No, but it just made me think that we don't have an explicit thing, right? We don't have explicit reasons for most characters at this point, but we have a feeling that things are going to find out. Like, we get flashbacks to Zoro's upbringing where he was, like, fighting. We don't know. I haven't found out yet why we're getting flashbacks, but we did. And they say to each other, Buggy and Shanks, that if they meet on the ocean, it's a fight to the death. And it was said in a playful tone. It's very rivalry. It's very, classic shonen.
Yeah, when he says, like, Shanks is the person I'd never forgive, we kind of think, like, oh, they're actually fighting. But then it's kind of like, oh, they're siblings who would be like, I'll kill you. And you're like, no, you won't. Like, see you at Thanksgiving. Like, that's kind of the vibe you get between them.
We then get some interesting information. So they have a devil fruit on board, right? And we get this information that a devil fruit would sell for 100 million berries. Mm-hmm. That's a familiar number.
Yes, it is.
That is Nami's number, right? Which is funny then that she would go with the pirate who consumed a $100 million or 100 million berry devil fruit. But yeah. Then that leads to this whole plot of Buggy stealing the devil fruit, pretending he eats it, but it was a fake, and he actually has the real devil fruit, right? And then Shanks does his horrible crime. His horrible, terrible crime.
Looking out for his friend.
He surprises Buggy. He surprises Buggy from behind, which accidentally makes Buggy swallow
this giant pineapple-sized devil fruit.
Yep.
Because Buggy doesn't think, oh, let me drop this. He thinks, let me shove the entire pineapple in the mouth.
And then, swallow it. Fine.
Incredible.
And then in the end, Shanks actually saves Buggy's life.
Yeah.
Right? Because he can't swim anymore. Because, the devil fruit. So I guess my part is, and this is one that, we gotta wait to see, which I'm going to get into treasure and gold for Buggy because now we have that information. But before that, is this a situation of anime protagonist energy of, like, Buggy holds this against Shanks, but it's more friendly than that? Or is this a good indication of Buggy's own just general sort of narcissism in that he is looking to just blame other people for his faults as well? And the reason I ask that is because we're given backstory for this character. Mm-hmm. He's now the third villain we've met. Well, third villain group. Because we met Elvita, we met the Marines, and now we've met Buggy's crew. Mm-hmm. But we've gotten as much information about Buggy. Arguably, we've gotten more information about Buggy than we have about Shanks.
Sure.
We've gotten more information about Buggy than many characters.
Shanks has only been shown in flashback and not really even in his element. Like, fighting bandits is not the primary task of pirates. And so, Buggy, we see him in his element working towards his goals, whether we think he's doing a good job of it or not. He is there. He says he's a pirate. He's doing pirating. He's plundering. And, how effective he is maybe up for argument, but he's a formidable opponent, if nothing else.
Yep. So while we can clearly look him as coded as like a villainous character, which he could be, like you're saying, he's a pirate. Yeah. He's doing pirate things. He's working on behalf of his goals, his ambitions, and that's it.
In a lot of ways, that makes him far less evil than like Axe Hand Morgan, who like says that he's the law of the town. Like, when you think the law, you think this is the person looking out for the town, protecting them from pirates, but he's the one causing the harm. So is Buggy the person who says he's a pirate, who's dealing with life as a pirate? Luffy even says, like, if you're facing pirates, you have to be willing to put your life on the line. Buggy seems to be doing that. He may be kind of obnoxious at times, maybe worried about the flash more than the substance, but like, he's fighting, he's doing the thing that he's saying that he's going to do. Yeah. Certainly he's a bad guy for abusing the town and robbing everything. I'm not trying to say he's not a villain, but there's something that makes hypocrisy coupled with villainy make the villain seem so much worse.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where we get, I guess, into the treasure and the goal, right? Where it removes that element of hypocrisy, I guess. Buggy's goal was to become rich, right? And his initial goal was to get rich by finding this treasure that was under the ocean. Mm-hmm. The devil fruit was his treasure that would allow him to go on to have his own pirate journey with his own crew.
Sure.
Right? Shanks, even if accidentally, plays a part in Buggy eating his treasure. Mm-hmm. And he does interrupt his journey to his goal, which is very clear. He can't go underwater now, right? And he doesn't have the money either. He lost everything. Mm-hmm. And even if it was an accident, again, it was something Shanks did. Not saying that, like, I agree with Buggy, we stand Buggy or something, but right. By the logic of this show, it tracks.
Yeah, Buggy sees it that way. We can kind of see it that way ourselves.
It's flawed logic,
yeah.
But it tracks. Mm-hmm. But it does show that you can set a new goal.
Sure.
Because Buggy decides that his new goal is to obtain all treasure on land. Mm-hmm. Right? All the treasure on land. And that's fine. And go back to Shushu. Shushu lost his treasure. He lost his ambition. He can't protect the thing that doesn't exist. We now know that you can change your goal. You can adjust it. Right?
Yeah, you have to. Like, you either find something new, or do you just give up on everything? Do you give up on life? It goes on. I feel like it adds a little bit of gravity to all of the decisions that the characters make when you have to revise. Effectively, what Luffy is doing is forcing everyone to revise. Alvida gonna have to change. Like, she can't keep her fantastic navigator anymore. Luffy made sure Kobe left. Axe Hand Morgan's now getting arrested. Can't be in charge of everyone anymore. Has to change it up. Luffy gets there, and Buggy's gonna have no choice but to reevaluate after fighting this bizarre rubber man.
Yep. And I will say this is interesting because I feel like my brain, if I heard this externally, my brain would say it's a cop-out. Mm-hmm. Right? Then that means that there's no stakes because you lose a goal, you can get a new goal. Right? But it actually functioned differently. It did the opposite, where I realized that he changes his goal entirely. Right? So it actually...
Buggy does.
Mm-hmm. Buggy changes his goal entirely. And to me, that now makes it more believable, right? It's not that something happens that he loses his goal and now he finds a workaround. Like, he magically gets a suit that lets him breathe underwater or something, right? No, his goal's gone. He gets it. We don't have look for the Dragon Balls and revive Goku 15 times.
Right.
We have the world continues. These characters exist beyond their ambition. And I think that's really interesting. It's a good thing to play with, right? It's such a small detail, but the fact that he chose to want all the treasure on land, right? That's great. With that said, there are characters who maybe would not be able to adjust their things like that, their goals like that. For example, Luffy wants to be king of the pirates. He's not gonna go and be like, well, I want to be king of the pirates in this hemisphere, right? Maybe, I don't know, but
Well, it's how they deal with their limitations too. Like Buggy says, "Well, I'm going to be depending on myself." Like he's got his crew, but as you said, he uses them as shields. Buggy still centers everything on himself, and so he's changing up what he wants to do. King of the Pirates want the treasure, so I'm doing it this way. Luffy has these limitations based off his devil fruit, and just says, "You know what? I need help. I'm gonna need help. That's just inherent to me. But I'm not changing my goal for anyone, even though my circumstance changed. I still want the same thing. Like I'm not changing my goals. King of the Pirates, it's King of the Pirates this way. I have a belief in what King of the Pirates is and what this means. I need it to happen. I'm gonna need some help." And that's what he looks for in his crew is who can fill in the gaps in what he can't do.
yep. Um, that's gonna come back. It's gonna come back because we'll get there. We have a nice little bit of logic that extends. Also, I like that Nami basically says that stolen treasure can be stolen. Can be stolen.
Right. She steals Buggy's treasure, and Buggy's like, "That's my treasure." She's like, no, I stole it, so it's mine."
We get two more attacks: Chop Chop Festival and Gum Gum Bazooka. And I think this is the first Gum Gum Bazooka, but I also know it is the first Gum Gum Bazooka. But I also know that I feel like this move comes back a lot. Like Pistol and Bazooka become.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay, fine. This is where I also get to address one of my concerns in a good way. I mentioned in episode 0 that I was concerned about the art style working with action.
Okay.
In this fight between Luffy and Buggy, it largely hinges on comedic attacks. Like it's kind of slapsticky, the fight in general.
Yeah.
And
Somehow serious, but also it's completely ridiculous. Like Buggy is separating, and it's not like you see bones or blood or anything. He's just grayed out circles on all over the places where he's broken apart. Like that's goofy. But at the same time, like he did stab Zoro. He did puncture Luffy's hat.
like we have stakes for these attacks. We know that things can happen, but it works with the art style.
Yeah.
So it's goofy, it's comedic attacks, but there is still a sense of gravitas of how important this stuff is, that there is danger, and it works with the art style. So I'm interested. I'm happy about that. We get Nami who's willing to fix the hat, right? We get to see some. We see that Luffy is an honest character as well in his response to all this. And in the end, they do win over the mayor and basically the whole town, but largely the mayor, who's like, "Yeah, they knocked me out, and they're great for it."
Well, that's Luffy. One of like a couple of Luffy's like pivotal characterizing moments where like one where he like backs up Zoro in Zoro's fight with Kabuji when Buggy's trying to like interfere, and Luffy catches Buggy's hand before Buggy can interfere. Like we get a sense, okay, Luffy is looking out. Then at the end of the fight, when like the townspeople were like, "Oh gosh, Buggy did all of this. They even hurt the mayor." Luffy's like, "No, I hurt the mayor. Like it was all me." Like he's in it to fight. He likes honest fights, but he's also an honest person in and of himself. He's like, "No, I'm a pirate. I did what I wanted, and I don't want somebody else to get credit for this."
I don't know. It was good. It was a good little wrap up. In the end, I was surprised, I guess, at how much I was able to get out of the conflict, the fight with Buggy, and not just from the flashback itself, which is expected, but from everything. My parting thing, and again, not a plot hole, but just like a little inconsistency.
Okay. I have an important question for you on that front too.
Okay. It ends with Luffy being super generous with the town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, splitting half the money.
So that interrupts Nami's goal. So
Yes, it does.
I'm trying, and I know that it's just a simple matter of like, most likely it was just Oda wanting to write a little comedic moment that shows that Luffy's a nice character. But like, I can't help but want to dig really deep into that and keep an eye out for that of Luffy messing with other people's goals on his crew.
I think that's an important thing to consider. I would say, not to give too much away, kind of deal. I think that's something that we will want to come back to more specifically when we find out what Nami wants that money for. Like she says, she wants that money She only steals from pirates, so it seems like it's something good. But like anything else, everything is complicated. Um, so I think that's an important question because he is definitely messing with her goal. But since we don't quite know what that goal is, that's what makes it a little bit tricky. Now, in a fun question that I think is important to ask and important for all One Piece fans, who do you think would win in a fight knowing that Buggy has devil fruit powers? Zoro versus Buggy, when Zoro knows that cutting him won't work, do you think Zoro could beat Buggy in a straight fight anyways? Once that element of surprise is out, do you think Zoro could just beat him in a fist fight?
It's interesting because like I didn't really mention it, but the way that they beat Buggy is pretty ingenious, right? Like holding his body parts, and
Yeah, he splits up and catch him and then blast him away.
I guess the thing that I want to know before I could fully answer that is just because Buggy can separate his body into different things does not mean he can't be cut.
I think he can't be cut.
Because like we see him doing frontal attacks, we don't see him getting cut from behind.
We don't see
Or do you
him
mean
getting
like if he's cut halfway through, like instead of all the way through, like if he just
something
gets
like
cut?
that, yeah.
Because like I'm trying to imagine like, you know, whatever he sneak up on him, slash into him from behind.
Okay, so you're saying like, is this an activated thing or is this an inherent thing? Like, does it mess with their DNA?
Because like for example, we saw with Luffy when he eats the devil fruit, like Shanks is holding him and then he droops. So we know that he has some control over it, and but that is also inherent. But is it always on? I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna. You know, I think I know the answer. I think One Piece viewers know the answer, but I think if you're questioning that, I think it's a good enough question that I shouldn't answer it.
Okay, because like my what I want to say.
So would you say then that it hinges, like whether or not Zoro could win, hinges on whether or not Buggy does it accidentally, or like has to activate his separation? If Buggy can do it automatically, do you think that would mean that he automatically wins against Zoro? Like if he cuts or he gets separated, he's fine no matter what. Does that mean he wins? But if he has to activate it, he doesn't win?
If he has to activate it, 100%. He doesn't because I feel like Zoro would be able to find a way to not trick him, but like to cut him in a way. He's going to be very upfront. He's not going to sneak up behind Buggy, but he'll find a way to like cut him that's appropriate, or like pin a piece of his body down or something. That's fine. If it's not, if it is like just his body can't be cut, you cut him and nothing happens, then at that point, I think no.
The correct answer is Zoro always wins because we are going to appeal to the Zoro fans here.
Okay.
No, it's an interesting question because like I almost think like Zoro turns his sword sideways and just like slaps Buggy. I think he's got a good chance.
Well, like okay, so for example, let me give you another example.
Beats him with a scabbard or something.
Like we see Buggy keep his head intact. Can Buggy separate his head? Can Buggy separate himself along a vertical axis?
We're now in the we can't answer this line of questioning.
Okay, fine.
Because that is a fair question.
I've had
You cannot know that. You cannot possibly know that after 8 episodes because if we don't see it, you can't know it.
Okay, but that's where there's so many questions. So that's why like I can't know because I don't know the extent of Buggy's power.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm certainly not going to tell you any more than that, so that's fine.
But yeah, I'm excited now to start seeing where this world goes, where it opens up to, right? Largely because the care that was put into Buggy's story. Mind you, I'm not saying that just having that simple storyline is like, oh, everything's gonna be great, because you can also overuse that kind of idea, right? Not every villain can become your best friend.
Yeah, it's the gravity of Buggy feels different compared to the previous villains, and we'll probably make more comparisons to, soon to be showing up villains as well.
So we'll see you there. But I like how they've handled it and how so far, 9 episodes in, they are or Oda is consistently sticking to his central premise, which is, the ideology, which is these themes of personal ambition, personal motivation, treasures, and whatnot, and exploring them in ways that don't automatically validate a character's or affirm a character's actions, right? Like we said before, Buggy's thoughts are consistent with what we've seen so far with treasures and ambitions. It doesn't vindicate him. He's still being a pretty villainous character, right? Sure. He's doing certain things that are similar to what the Navy was doing, right? With the way he treats his henchmen and stuff, with the tyranny and all of that.
Well, you have a character who says he's a villain acting like a villain, as opposed to a character that says they're a hero acting like a villain.
Exactly. And that honesty it's refreshing.
Sure.
It's arguably one of the reasons why so many people who are actually thinking in their right minds can still sympathize or at least enjoy the Joker, right? In a way, right? It's very direct. Yeah, it's very clear. It's fine. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And to answer a question that you didn't ask, I'm down to. It's one you asked last time. I am down to see Buggy come back, but I would be so down to see Shushu come back.
That's fair. Yeah, especially since Shushu needs a new setting and location.
Shushu needs a new motivation. He needs a new ambition or goal, right? He needs something else to protect. Have him protect the ship. I'm down.
I can understand that. Shushu's adorable. I think that's a cool pick. We have the Buggy Pirates, but then I like the idea of there being secondary options too. So, awesome.
Oh, one other thing too. I keep on forgetting this, but it happened in this episode. Now I keep hearing people referring to Luffy as Straw Hat, right? Mugiwara. And I'm very excited to hear other people say Mugiwara, because that's one small, not spoiler, but one thing you showed me before is just the delicious Mugiwara being said by various voice actors.
I see how to say this to viewers. There is a very iconic character saying Mugiwara, and comes a few hundred episodes into the series, and I just wanted to show Mitch months ago now, before we even got started in this. Listen to how great this voice actor is, and if you'd like to make a guess as to what it is, I'll be glad to confirm or deny in the comments. But just give name guesses. Don't give anything contextual if you can avoid it.
All right. Well, with that, if you enjoyed what you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. If you are listening to us on any podcast app, please subscribe, follow, and leave us a 5-star review if you liked it. And thank you so much. See you next time.
Yeah, join us again in the next episode of Wine Piece.